Good afternoon. Welcome to the Mannin Line on Manx Radio. We're in session till 1 today with the Chair and Vice Chair of Isle of Man Post Office, Julie Edge, and Chris Thomas, MHKs, are with us. Any thoughts on the matter, then get in touch by text, email or phone. But in the meantime, 185 people are waiting for the results of a COVID-19 test. 172 people booked in for tests today. There were no new cases as at 4 o'clock yesterday, so if there are no positive cases today at 4, it'll be 12 days since the last one. We currently have 6 active cases, 10 of which are in the community, 1 person in Noble's ICU. The vaccine dashboard shows 61,079 first doses have been administered, 18,896 second doses have been administered. That's a grand total of 76,975 jabs. 4,013 people are booked in for the next 7 days, and the Department of Health and Social Care currently holding 9,778 shots of vaccine in stock at the moment. So today, the Isle of Man Post Office was originally operated by the UK's GPO with a daily postal connection with the UK since 1879. All that changed in the 1960s. The UK GPO offered the opportunity for the Crown Dependencies to do it themselves. Jersey said yes, the Isle of Man said no. But in 1972, the GPO decided to leave the Isle of Man, and the Isle of Man Post Office came in, I think it was the 5th of July 1973. Of course, later on, when BT started, Manx Telecom arrived with the phone lines. But we've been independent, as it were, in the post office now since the 1970s. Julie Edge is chair of the post office as well. Did you ask for the job, or were you given it, Julie?
I was given the job and basically just told, go and sort Isle of Man Post Office out. It needs sorting. So.
Did you know much about it before?
Obviously, I've always shown an interest in the post office. I've, worked within the public sector for a long part of my career, and personally think it was a mistake to let the GPO go at that point in time. But that's where we are. Great organisation. So pleased and proud to be chair of it.
Did you? Is it different to what you thought it would be?
Not really. I didn't get much advice or told what the problems were when I arrived.
So they wanted a fresh pair of eyes?
I think so, yeah. And hopefully that's what they got.
Good. Your vice chair is Chris Thomas as well. Chris, what do you add to the party?
I'm a board member, normal vice chair responsibilities, and I think the thinking of council ministers when they appointed me and asked Tim Wood to confirm that was that I had experience of what government was doing in the way of the public service reform and the way of looking at the future of benefits and looking at community hubs, and so therefore I think they wanted some to make sure that the strategic thinking of government and the timetable of government meshed completely with the Post Office Board.
What do you see the biggest challenge for Isle of Man Post Office at the moment?
Politicians. So basically, the Post Office has a 5-year strategy which is implementing successfully. That was approved in Tynwald in 2018, but especially as the elections got closer, we've had motions in Tynwald which, in a way, have taken up time. We've got an incredibly difficult situation in as much as the postal business, more generally the logistics business, is changing. Management time is focused on how to deal with that, the change in distribution of activity from letters to parcels, doing things like thinking about how we access across, especially in the times of COVID, thinking through how we provide a retail network. But most tricky, I think, I found for the board and the management, the senior management, is that politicians. The strategy was approved and it keeps getting looked at in Tynwald. It's a bit like Manx Radio situation, but on steroids. Sometime in the post office, at least Manx Radio, and he has to have it revisited every 5 years. The post office seems to be every 6 months. And when we have run up to the programme like this, you challenge us. The public out there cares about the postal service because it is provided as part of the local shop, and it's an important part of the community. And so therefore that's why Julie and I are here, I think, think, just to explain the reality, set out what the future might look like.
So, Julie Edge, why are other politicians sticking their oar in? Why do they have an opinion on the matter if there is a strategy?
Well, I think it's lack of understanding of what the postal business is, what the structure of Isle of Man Post Office is, where it's come from. And, I think sometimes it's electioneering and grandstanding, and certainly within debates or question time within Tynwald or the House of Keys, it's quite clear the lack of knowledge.
The public sees the red of the post office. They see the main post offices, they see the sub-post offices, they see the postmen, postwomen. They get that service. As Chris Thomas said, times have changed in the past 20, 10, 5 years. The logistics business, Amazon, the whole, and of course private couriers, private deliveries on the Isle of Man. And the post office, for the first time, made a loss?
Yeah, in 2017, but obviously I only took over October 2016. As soon as I arrived, I could see there was major problems with the pension scheme. There hadn't really been challenges, and there'd been little working closely with the government. And obviously the levy, quite often I know people contact you with regards to the levy. I think I was the first chair to actually go to Treasury and say to them, can you help us out here? The levy,
industry jargon here. The levy is
the levy is
what you pay to Treasury.
What we pay to Treasury, and so many people still think that happens. It's not happening now. Treasury have been very supportive of Isle of Man Post Office to help us get back on track.
What was the levy for?
It was basically if we have to make a profit. So if a profit was made, a percentage went to Treasury. Clearly, we weren't going to make a profit 2017, and we obviously had to pay the Treasury what was expected. And there were agreements, Andy, previously reached by politicians that have been chairs in the past. So it was a challenge, but Treasury very supportive and have helped us get back on track.
OK. If you want to get in touch with Julie Edge, Chair of the Post Office, and Chris Thomas, Vice Chair of the Post Office, call 66 13 68. Email studio@maxradio.com or text 166 177. Anything you'd like to ask about the Post Office. One of those things that's always seems to be there, Chris Thomas, totemic, an emblem of the establishment as well. And some people see when a post office disappears, it's almost like a little bit of the community goes.
Exactly, and that's summarised in the strategic plan, and it came up in your story this morning from the Licensed Victuallers Association, Mr. Jochen. Basically, there's certain things that make the community. In part, that's the school playground and the community activities that go on in the hall in the evening. In part, that's the parks, but it's also the pub and the shop and the postal services and the bus services, and they're all important parts of the community, and that's why this needs to be a cross-public service response, and the Isle of Man needs to decide how much it's prepared to pay and lose efficiency as such in terms of the social aspects of the community. Okay. And the Post Office does what the Isle of Man needs and wants.
The Post Office comes in, now there are, I'm trying to think, 8 departments, 7 statutory boards. Which department does the Post Office sit in?
It's sponsored by the Department for Enterprise. It can also be directed by Council of Ministers directly. It can also be directed by Treasury in terms of financial aspects. And obviously we do anything that Tynwald resolves. So in December 2020, there was a resolution that we would sustain existing financial services, existing retail services until later on this year, and that's what we've done. So most directly it's the Department for Enterprise, but we have a close relationship with Treasury, Council of Ministers and Tynwald as well. So
who represents the Post Office in Tynwald? Is Enterprise, is it?
Well, I obviously represent within Tynwald, but we're sponsored by the Minister for Enterprise, Mr. Skelly. So anything that we put forward to the Council of Ministers, it's Mr. Skelly that sits around the table in the Council of Ministers to put any concerns of the Post Office forward. To be honest, I think we need to make changes there because quite clearly with the retail strategy and the retail businesses, they fall under enterprise. So that's something from a governance and structural and the Postal Act that needs to be looked at in the future.
And the crucial thing, Andy, is that is that from time to time, Julie and I have been very embarrassed, I think, in Tynwald, because we have a board that's responsible for the post office in law. And in practical terms, we've developed a good 5-year strategy, taken it to Tynwald for approval, behaved properly by Tynwald, and some of the insults and the attacks on people on the board and the senior management of the post office is basically quite frankly embarrassing.
From within Tynwald.
In Tynwald, yeah. Every time we sit there and we don't reply, they've obviously got no ability to reply. But basically, you ask, how are we sponsored by a government? But we've got to remember this is a statutory board, and statutory boards have boards, and they have senior management who report to the board. And obviously they can be directed by Council of Ministers, by Treasury. We have a sponsoring department in the Department for Enterprise who can also direct us in terms of customer services and things. And it's very tricky, and we do need to resolve that. And one of the things that Julie and I are strongly supportive of is that the board has got to be respected, and that's what I meant by when you first asked me what's the problem. Our problem is politicians in one sense, because the board has the most responsibility for what's going on, working with the staff. Julie and I care passionately about the posties, we care passionately about communities, we care passionately about postal services, and the board does too, and that's what needs to come through.
You're almost on a hiding to nothing, though, because if you get it right, nobody notices. But if you get it wrong, everybody will chip in.
That's right. Obviously, I represent the board when I'm in Tynwald, and previously, I've had two vice chairs before Chris, and I was really pleased. As soon as he was made redundant from the Council of Ministers, I thought that's the perfect person we need, because he understands the difficulties the post office have had going through, a professional board, professional people, and then Council of Ministers involved as well before we can bring anything forward. But what we are actually doing, Andy, and this is what needs to be really clear, we are following the will of Tynwald in our strategies. They've all been approved by Tynwald and Tynwald members. Not everybody voted for it, but we are following the will of Tynwald.
Okay, let's get to some questions now. Teresa dropped us a note, and just to say, who makes the decision to close a sub-post office?
Okay, so we'll receive a resignation, or the sub-postmasters will give notice to the post office. There is a period of time that they can then rescind that notice, but as soon as we receive that notification, and the majority, Andy, of sub-postmasters that have handed in their notice to Isle of Man Post Office are people that are wishing to retire, to leave the island. They've offered valuable service for 30 years, some of them, to Isle of Man Post Office as an agent. They're private businesses operating as an agent for Isle of Man Post Office.
And this is, I think, maybe a lot of people don't quite understand. You pay the sub-post office to provide a service on your behalf, is that right?
That's correct. They're an agent for Isle of Man Post Office, so obviously our label's above the door, Isle of Man Post Office, and they provide services on behalf of Isle of Man Post Office from a postal point of view, but then they get paid for the other commercial agreements we've got in place for the banks, for instance, or SST for the MyCard, so it's all contractual commercial agreements.
Okay, and do you accept that with the the diminution of sub-post offices, people question the relevance of the post office? At the moment, I think the Portsmouth Mary sub-post office is in jeopardy at the moment. When that person retires, will there be a sub-post office in Portsmouth Mary?
Well, we've obviously had negotiations, and Mr. Calvert has continued to carry on at the present time until we know the will of Tynwald, and that then reports come back on communities, etc., and how they're expecting them to be sustained. We're in abeyance like everybody else at the present time.
Okay, and here's one in from Marie, just for Chris Thomas, just to say, closing Court Road Post Office in Ramsey was a bad decision. To get to Ramsey Post Office, you basically have to go through what's an off licence. Not acceptable. If you like, the ambience of post offices aren't what they used to be when there were main post offices. And I'm thinking of Douglas Main Post Office was an impressive building. It's a bar now, and you have what's basically a unit on Strand Street for the post office. So the public will question whether post offices have the gravitas they used to have.
That's true. So there were 2 Crown post offices in Douglas and Ramsey. That was even before Julie became an MHK. That was in my time in the previous administration. They are closed. That was a decision made at that time by previous board, by previous chairs, by previous politicians. Now what you say is correct, which is the Isle of Man Post Office retail network now is mostly dedicated in-store counters operated under that agency contract for services with a sub-postmaster, like Julie the Chair described. And the post office is neither owning the properties, nor is it leasing the properties, nor does it employ the staff, nor is it involved in the other business. And the people who provide those sub-post office services, those retail postal services, they are doing other things like running gift shops. Mannin Retail has about a third of the sub-post office contracts, and they do convenience stores. But there's all sorts of arrangements are possible. And what we're trying to do is to see the future. As the world changes and we get more and more parcels delivery, we've got to worry about having the right size vans to efficiently, and in terms of the environment as well, get those parcels both to people and also to pick them up, perhaps even when they want to return them occasionally. And we have to worry about making sure that that we help when government's clear and public service more generally is clear about what it wants to do as part of us. So we could either provide postal services in the community hubs if they're run by local authorities, or if banks start working with cafes or something to provide access to cash in cafes, as people from Department for Enterprise have started talking about recently, fine, we can then work out how to provide post office services. But what we want in the future is we want more access points and an efficiency in terms of lifestyles for the Isle of Man's people.
Julie, are the self-service kiosks working? There are quite a lot of them around the Isle of Man.
Well, obviously in the areas that they are, people are using them. And Ballasalla was the last one. Obviously, there was delays in that installation at Ballasalla because the spa shop done some refurbishment before we could actually set that up. And actually, that was quite interesting, Andy, that we had no complaints during that time. I know we were in a lockdown, but I think the most important thing with the digital era, we're looking forward to being able for people to sit at home and print their own sort of labels for parcels, etc. And hopefully in the future it'll be a service for the people where they want it, so and at the time they want it.
Much like with some of the, I think it's a company called Music Magpie, you can print your own return label off at home. That'll be safe and securely be able to do on the island?
Well, it's something we're looking into at the present time to make sure that it's, we do go out to consult with people. We've done many sort of surveys, and the majority of people want services at the right time for them. So obviously, I know last week, I think it was, you were getting complaints about post offices being closed at lunchtimes. That's down to the individual operating the postal service in their private premises.
Bearing in mind, as you say, that times have changed, there are private couriers, there are private people delivering parcels. People don't send out anywhere near the number of letters they used to because of email nowadays. Can you see the wood for the trees, Julie Edge? I mean, are you managing a declining business, or is there another direction of trajectory for it?
We're actually managing customers' changing needs and what they require from a postal business. Obviously, our legislation says that we have to convey letters around the island, and obviously the parcel side of the business is the commercial arm of the business. So the law actually says we convey letters and packages around the island. Parcels is completely separate on the commercial side, and obviously a growth area. Last year, the decline in letters was over 16%, but parcels increased by over 19%. Now, okay, yes, we've had a pandemic and a lot of people were sitting at home, and that business is increased for us, but it's a very competitive business.
Chris Thomas, I mean, if letters go down 16% year on year, that's out of business in 10 years.
Exactly. So it's thrown at us by Minister Baker and various others that all we're doing is managing decline. But if the decline is inevitable, and if that's what people want because of the way that they're changing their use of postal services, isn't it better to manage that decline and actually be providing the new services and the better services in the way that people want? So Julie and I care passionately about the older populations in the south, in the north, everywhere around the island. And we understand the need for community hubs, but first of all, the public service needs to understand what the people are demanding and talking about when they say they want community hubs. pubs? Is it a chat? Is it a meeting people? Is it just something to do? If it's just, I know some people who get frustrated. They'd rather sit down with mum and have a chat with her for an hour. But what they have to do at the moment is they have to go along to the post office, get their cash from the post office, and then an hour or so later go along to the bank and put it into the bank. Isn't that a bit pointless? Wouldn't it be a bit better to actually get the the pension paid into the bank and then have a sit down in a cafe and chat with your mum, or even in her front room, and so on and so on? So we need to understand what's going on, and we need to adapt to it. That's in terms of the community part, and in terms of the postal services and the logistics start. That's by far the largest part of the post office's business. We need good management, the management we've got, to actually think through what the future trends are, to manage difficult relationships with people across big logistics providers, the Royal Mail, to do things like manage the planes and the boats that are all part of the postal service, to actually put us in a place where we need to be in a few years' time.
Okay, all right. Here's Stephen with us on the Mannin line. Stephen, you're live with Chris Thomas and Julie Edge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Andy. Hello to the panel.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to put a question, if I may, because I've been talking to friends and neighbours. Is there any chance of the Isle of Man Post Office being a bank? And then we can disregard the Isle of Man Bank and all its lack of service.
Okay, where do you live, Stephen?
In Glenvine.
Okay, Chris Thomas or Julie?
Well, the first thing to say is that the Post Office Act actually allows the Post Office to do many cash transactions, and we already provide service for Barclays Bank, for Lloyds Bank in many places around the island, and we've always offered to do it for Royal Bank of Scotland, Isle of Man Bank. They've declined. Second point is that if Government, Treasury, Department for Enterprise, in fact, most specifically, the Communities Committee chaired by Laurie Hope at the moment, decide something about cash in the future, the Post Office will go along, we'll cooperate. We've provided with lots of information already. Over the last 15, 20 years, people have been writing proposals for the Post Office to be more involved in cash transaction. They've always been considered. The regulator has a view. We've provided all of that information to Department for Enterprise, who are just in the process, we understand, of commissioning a consultant to analyse the evidence to come back to Tim Wood.
Do you want to be a bank? Would you like the Isle of Man Post Office to offer banking facilities?
Cash, it seems to be important for older people, but also for children. There are reasons why I use cash sometimes. Cash is important, but the use of cash is declining, and especially during the COVID pandemic, more and more people were paying with things on cards.
Okay.
So
Stephen, particularly, what was it you wanted about the Isle of Man Post Office to be a bank, Stephen?
Well, it is a bit onerous being a bank. Quite in depth, the responsibilities that the banks have.
Yeah. But why do you think the Isle of Man Post Office should be able to offer a banking service?
Well, especially the charities who are being penalised, and all the structure.
Okay, all right, Stephen, thank you. I'm trying to think. You had a post office had a relationship with Barclays a few years ago, didn't they?
Yeah, still have that relationship, and again, it's a commercial relationship with Barclays Bank.
And what do you offer? Because I remember that there was a big sign in the post office at Onken for Barclays.
Yeah, it's counter services. Obviously, people can make payments in, and people just do their Barclays services within Onken. However, that's down to Barclays as to where they wish to have them.
Is that available at every post office?
No, that's what I was saying. It's down to Barclays Bank where they wish to have a commercial contract with the post office to provide those services.
Okay, and you'd be open if they wanted it elsewhere?
Yes, we're open to anybody that wishes to put services through the Countess as an agency.
Okay, just to get this clear then, Chris Thomas, if the Isle of Man Bank the Isle of Man Post Office wanted to offer banking facilities, because years ago the Post Office Savings Bank in England was famous for it. Would you want to do it, Chris Thomas?
So banking is different from cash transmission. Being bank means taking deposits and lending. We couldn't do that under our law, but we can already do, as people can see, lots of cash transaction. The issue is it costs, and the reason why banks are changing the way that they provide cash is because it costs them lots of money. So we need government, Tynwald, the Manx public more generally, to decide to have a new national bank, because it would cost money. So that's why the Department for Enterprise, and Laurie Hooper in particular, who also chairs the Chief Minister's Communities Committee, is actually engaging, as I understand it, a consultant to help them make up their minds so that we actually have the facts on the table. And at the moment, the Post Office is just making sure that those consultants are fully informed with all the work that's been done over decades, in fact, about this very question.
Okay.
We'll be one of the stakeholders, obviously, that they speak to, but we'll provide whatever services the will of the government, with Tynwald, wish for.
Okay, Tony, you're live with Chris Thomas and Julie Edge.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon to everybody. I've got a very simple question, but a very difficult answer, I'm sure. And I don't suppose you've got an answer, but I think the issue needs to be brought up at Tynwald, and Tynwald need to stop prevaricating and make some decisions which would be for the benefit of the Isle of Man, as opposed to the benefit of other people. The Isle of Man people have got millions of pounds sitting in banks which is not earning interest, because the banks don't want to pay it. Despite them getting money for nothing, they won't give us any of it. Now, my question is, why can't the Isle of Man do exactly what the Post Office had already done years and years and years ago? I remember as a kid that I had a Post Office account. Why can't we have an Isle of Man savings account which will provide two things? One, it will provide a government-backed scheme where they would guarantee interest and guarantee the money, which they already do at the bank for most banks. But also, it would allow the Post Office to become a hub where people would go to deposit money, take money out. But it's on a savings account, not a current account. And the idea that we don't need cash is rubbish, because people couldn't pay with cash during COVID because none of the people wanted it. They wanted credit cards and debit cards. So if you had no debit card, you had it, couldn't go shopping. That was what drove the behaviour of not using cash. Now, my question to you two is, and Tynwald, and all the other people involved that seem to spend a lot of time talking about things, why can't we just form a savings bank and use the Isle of Man Post Office branches and expand them so they become community hubs, but that money is able to be accessed by the Treasury, which would help us dramatically.
Okay, Julie Edge.
Yep. So, hi, Tony. Thanks for calling in. Obviously, I think you're talking about a Treasury decision, really, ultimately. But, I'm in favour of Isle of Man government offering a bond system out into the public, which could also be operated through the Post Office. But with regards to savings account, obviously, banking is highly regulated and it's licensed. So, it would be up to the government to get a specific license to be able to operate that. Obviously, Isle of Man Post Office operate with just providing services over the counter at the present time, so that's not as regulated, although the FSA do have involvement with Isle of Man Post Office.
Okay, Chris Thomas.
Well, it's not cheap, Tony, to handle cash and to take savings in a physical location. So the question would come, would you need one of these places in both Port St Mary and Port Erin and Castletown, or would you want only one down in the south? So that's one point. The second point is that the one that Julia's made, which is that savings and creating savings products is probably very valuable, but we need to decide that outside the post office could do it, but there are other people who could do it as well. The co-op, for instance, has a bank, not quite as big as it used to be, but the co-op would be another provider. It could be completely separate from bodies outside. We could do a brand new creation, but it might not even be the right thing to do. We need investigation.
And Tony, what do you think of Tynwald involving itself in the post office plan?
I think you've got too many bosses. Simple as that.
Okay, all right, Tony, thanks for being with us today. We're with the Chair and Vice Chair of Isle of Man Post Office, Julie Edge, MHK, Chris Thomas, MHK. If you've got any thoughts on the matter, on the future of the Post Office. Now, declining letters, parcels going through the roof, but also who's going to pay for this? and what is the future for the post office? Any thoughts you have, call 66 13 68, email studio@manxradio.com, or SMS text 166 177.
Did you know it's fostering fortnight right now on the Isle of Man? The Family Placement Service is looking for new foster carers to look after young people, like me and my sister. If you think you have the space, time and understanding to foster a child, please get in touch with the Family Placement Service. There's children of all ages who need a foster family to help care for them. Call 610000. That's 610000. Fostering is who you are, not what you are, that makes the difference.
For your new bathroom, head to Pacesetter, Harris Terrace, Douglas or Spring Valley. In Pacesetter's fully fitted showroom, you'll find the latest bathroom products and designs, from new contemporary styles to traditional Victorian tiles, wall and ceiling panels, accessories and much more. With many ranges exclusive to Pacesetters, plus professional design advice from the experts, visit Pacesetter, Harris Terrace, Douglas or Spring Valley.
You can get the best of everything, where the price is twice as nice.
Isle of Man Railways.
Tickets are now available for this season's range of onboard dining events, featuring old favourites including the legendary Pie and Mash Train, the Curry Club and many more. Or take your taste buds on a trip to remember with our fabulous Dining Cars of the World and Steam theme events. To find out what's cooking on the dining car and to book, call 697 457 or visit rail.im.
Isle of Man Railways. A&B Metals, A&B Metals. Gates and railings, balustrades, structural steel, it's our game. Come to the A&B Metals crew, there is nothing we can't do. A&B Metals know the rules, we've all been to metal school. All our teams are skilled to use all the metal working tools.
A&B Metals in Hills Meadow are probably the largest structural steel supplier on the island. So where do you get your steel?
A&B Metals, A&B Metals, A&B Metals.
The Man in Line with Andy Wint.
And live in the studio, Julie Edge, MHK, Chris Thomas, MHK, Chair and Vice Chair of Isle of Man Post Office, which I understand is, Julie, it's the 50th anniversary. When?
That's right, 2023.
Because it all kicked off on the 5th of July 1973, so Chris Thomas, 50 years of age. Isle of Man Post Office has changed enormously, and you're known as somebody who thinks things through. Where do you think the future is for a state-owned post office? I mean, this isn't exclusive to the Isle of Man. This is happening everywhere around the Western world, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think there are three big questions that we've asked ourselves and we want Tynwald to resolve, and the election will be very helpful for that. Number one, at the moment, the post office has, it is a statutory board, and it has an obligation to deliver letters. What does the public want? Does it want us to become more commercial, or does it want us to take on more public services? We can do either. Second point is that we care about our staff. We provide best pensions. We actually pay for them fully from post office revenues, differently from pretty much everywhere else in the public service. Julie's been, and the board that she's chaired has been instrumental in that. But some of our competitors don't do that. They don't have the same. It's called the gig economy, so the Manx public needs to decide that. And the third one is we now have climate change obligations and imposed on us, and our competitors don't. And what does that mean for us in the future?
Well, it's well known that some couriers who deliver get paid per parcel. And as you say, the gig economy is, and people have to decide what it is that they want. I just want to go back, Julie Edge, to the fact that, and this is something that quite a few people have picked up on the text today, why is it then, why have you got enemies in Tynwald? Why is the post office beset by people who really want to trip you up?
I think that's just some personalities within Tynwald, and they need to get on with the business that they've been provided to do within their own departments. I don't understand it. I've invited every single member of Tynwald up to the post office, and very few, Andy, have taken up that option to come and actually understand the business. I think there's a lack of business knowledge within Tynwald as well. Obviously, the people that are supportive are the ones that actually understand it's a business operations, commercial sensitivity, etc. I really don't understand it. To me, if you're in Tynwald and you want to shout from the rooftops about something, come to the business and find out what that is.
The fact that letters may be gone in, 10, 15 years' time, Chris Thomas, and the way the future is going, Isle of Man Post streams of revenue have changed over the years now. What's the growing stream of revenue? What's the future for you?
Parcels and other aspects of logistics. We also try and add on services around that, and we have this social obligation which we take very seriously inside communities and for the wider public service. So that's where the post office is. It needs to be directed by Tim Wood, the Manx public, through the election to move to its new future. But nearly a 20 million business is the one about postal services, and parcels are becoming more important in that all the time.
I'll make a sweeping generalisation just based on messages we've got today, in that older people and the elderly love the post office.
And they love cash, and the world is changing. Our business will change with the demand. That's what we've always said. And the post office is a trusted brand. Letters will always have a future. There's, my mother and father are sadly in hospital at the moment. Writing letters is very important. But things like digital identity and government doing the census online rather than doing it through the postal system, and government moving vehicle licences to a digital system, and government encouraging people to receive pensions through their bank accounts, is all having a profound impact on the number of letters sent and on the way that people interact.
So you have a generational problem in that younger people aren't used to doing what older people are used to doing, and you have government snipping at your heels, taking the bread off your table.
That's it. And we could have a new digital identity law quite soon, and that might be instrumental in reducing letters further.
But the post office is actually very. We're concerned about our people in our communities, and we actually during the pandemic tried to create a system where we could deliver cash to the most vulnerable who couldn't get access to cash because they didn't have a bank account, and we worked up a very good system that would have worked. It was never actually used. SSD were in favour of that. It was never actually used. So it's a fine balance, but we do provide cash in the communities, and we do take cash in for many of the businesses within the areas as well. Okay,
it's a message question, and I probably know the answer, but I'll give it to you. Doesn't Peel Post Office act on behalf of Barclays?
But Peel has Lloyds Bank, definitely. I'm aware of that. I'm not sure about Barclays, but certainly we can look into that.
Okay, can you tell me why, this is Julie, another Julie, can you tell me why the 48-hour delivery is no more, and why are people still charged for it knowing it no longer happens?
Well, obviously we're in a commercial agreement with Royal Mail. They're a partnership. We're not Royal Mail, we're Isle of Man Post. Royal Mail have seen significant difficulties through the pandemic, and some of the services, and we do put out as often as possible via the media and via Manx Radio, etc., if there is any delays, and there was significant delays, and obviously there is still delays with international. We're aware of that. We're trying to work through that, but we've actually stopped that service at the present time because we can't get reassurance from Parcel Force as to when that will be resumed. The actual biggest percentage increase for us was the prepaid next day delivery during the pandemic, and that did seem to be a service that continued quite well with Royal Mail.
But your caller is right. Lloyds is Castletown and Peel. Barclays is Onchan, Laxey, Peel, Port Erin and Port St Mary.
Okay, so are you first a commercial enterprise and second a community asset? What order does it come in?
We're actually proud to be a public service that doesn't run off to Isle of Man government and ask for handouts, basically, keeping it quite simple. We're very proud of that status, and we want to retain that status, that we're a public service that operates and has to operate at a profit. It's not commercial from our Act. However, we do have commercial arms of the business that help support the rest of it. The most important people in the post office are our people, and to the community, the postmen were probably the only person they seen on a daily basis throughout the pandemic. They're important to the future of Isle of Man Post Office and getting out into our communities with handheld devices, etc. Services are changing.
Okay, with Julie Edge and Chris Thomas, Chair and Vice Chair, lots and lots of emails in concerning this. Just to say, somebody is also saying, so just reiterate and clarify what's happening in Portsmouth Mary. Does somebody have to volunteer? Does somebody have to pitch for the business? Or are you just taking the service away anyway when that person retires?
So obviously we're in a contractual agreement with that's the current Mr. Calvert, and he has handed his resignation in on a couple of occasions, but he's working with Isle of Man Post Office and to continue to provide that service whilst we're waiting for the outcomes of Tynwald. So it's Tynwald that's actually we're waiting for, and probably some of the businesses are.
Are there any plans, question in now, are any plans to open any new sub-post offices, bearing in mind that Peel's getting a lot bigger?
Obviously, if anybody comes to the post office and wants to include postal services within their business, we will always look at that. We're looking at anything to expand the business for our postal services.
Okay, now there are, let me see, self-service kiosks. I'm just going to run through them. Self-service kiosks. Colby, Douglas, there's a self-service kiosk. Henry Bloom Noble, there's one in ShopRite in Douglas. Sea Terminal's got one. There's one at Station Garage and Tesco as well. Who pays for those? Do you get paid to put them in, or do they have to pay you to have them there?
We obviously provide all the equipment, but there are some sort of land rent agreements in place,
Right.
so wherever it's placed within the building.
So you pay them to put the kiosk in there for an amount?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's a ground rent, it's called.
Okay, there's a question in. This is from Sean, who just said, just regarding the self-service kiosks, there are some in great positions and some in awful ones. The one at Tesco is completely hidden away. I didn't even know it was there till last Christmas when I had to ask somebody as well. Do you know which ones perform best? Do you get metrics as to which ones take the most money?
Yeah, I certainly haven't got that with me today, but certainly at the board we're very aware. And if we asked for a breakdown of that, we can get that. And we can, it's commercial information that we need to see how they're performing, and obviously we would review that and remove them if they're not in the right place.
Okay, lots more messages to get through in a moment with Julie Edge and Chris Thomas from Isle of Man Post Office.
If your business buys professional indemnity or directors and officers liability insurance, you'll be well aware that premiums are rising and cover is being reduced. Aon can talk you through the different exclusions to help you get the best deal. We're one of the largest international insurance specialists and we're here to help. Call 692 400.
Aon Isle of Man.
Aon Isle of Man Limited is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority as an insurance intermediary in respect of general business.
The 2021 Isle of Man Census is calling. Be ready to answer it online and on time. The Isle of Man Census is for everything you care about. It's all about you, your family, your friends, your health, your environment, your island. And just a short amount of your time will help to shape the Isle of Man's future. Census Day is the 30th of May, and you can complete it online in just a few clicks. Log on and be counted. Go online to census21.im.
Can Do is more than just an attitude. Can Do is making a world of difference in a different world. It's a team of specialists aiming to make more of your money. Can Do is a fruitful relationship built on your terms. Can Do is Canaccord Genuity Wealth Management. Visit candowealth.com to see how we can help you build your wealth with confidence. Canaccord Genuity Wealth International Limited is licensed for investment business by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Here on the Nation Station, we're springing into action with B&B Furniture to give away a brand new bed worth £499. Just call into B&B on the Snugborough Trading Estate and find the celebs in a bed. Tell us who they are by texting 166177, starting your message with the word bed and including your name. All correct entries will go into the big prize draw live on Manx Radio on May 17th. Celebs in a bed with B&B Furniture and Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Julie Edge and Chris Thomas live on the Mannin Line today. So the Isle of Man Post Office is marching into the future, Julie Edge. When does this print your own stamp thing start?
Obviously, we're working on the technology behind that at the present time to make sure that the public can do it. But I'm sure many people are aware of the Royal Mail advert showing the large postal box where you can drop parcels off. We're looking at all of these innovative ideas, and we will bring them online at Isle of Man Post Office. The hard-working staff, we've reduced the executive staff under my tenure. We've looked at all the terms and conditions and the pension changes. It's one organisation of the government that's made, and it was tough decisions had to be made the pension change. We've closed the defined benefit scheme to any new employees to sustain that pension for the staff that are within it at the present time. Postal workers are the key for Isle of Man Post Office getting out in our communities, and we are returning a profit this year, back to profit, which is what we forecast, and I'm really pleased and proud to be chair to a business that's returning a profit again this year.
Here's Mike with us. You're live on the air, Mike.
Hello, Andy. Just a quick question. A point that Mr. Thomas made just now about the census being digital. If you're not online and you don't have a smartphone, how are we going to do this?
So basically, the post office is about fourth on the list of opportunities to respond. So everybody will receive a letter from government sent by the post office. We're just the agent of government to send the letters, and that will give you options, and one of those is actually to ask for a letter you can send back. So people don't need to worry, there will be a post office option, but government has designed this census for the first time as being what they call, and what I call, digital by default, and we'll see how it works. The post office has offered to do it in a different way, but again, as often has been the case, our offer's been declined.
Okay, Charlie's with us now. Hello, Charlie.
Hi, I'm in my 70s, but people mid-70s into their 80s are not all digital age, are they?
No, certainly. What's your point?
People that don't have computers.
Yeah. Well, the option is you can get a paper copy, Chris Thomas, is that right?
Yeah. Yep. But you just had an add-on about the census go digital. But one thing is, some old friends of mine, they're in their 80s now, they're both worried sick that they won't be able to put their loved ones to rest because they haven't got the money. Now, I mentioned the one MHK some time ago. In the 50s, when I grew up, most families had a Christmas account at the local store where they put money in. Now, couldn't the post office have some sort of payment plan where people could just get their pension, put £4 or £5 in, and build up a nest egg for that sort of situation?
Okay, as a savings bank?
I'm not sure as of a bank because it's so regulated, but Isle of Man Post Office does take savings over the counters, and we do savings stamps for postal products, so there are options there. But with regards to a bank, as we've said before, that's really a Treasury decision, Isle of Man Government Tynwald decision. But obviously we will support our communities as best we can with any services that we can deliver that government decide.
All right, we've got a minute left. Just a couple of quick questions, Chris Thomas. If letters are going, will the philately business still be there?
Stamps and coins is another issue for us, another challenge for us. It's a great history that we have, nearly 50 years. The Isle of Man Post Office is nearly as ancient as Manx Radio, nearly as much as part of the establishment. Yes, it's under challenge, and we would like to work with Treasury more closely to maintain and grow that business.
Yeah, okay. And just one finally, just say, could you ask Julie, she didn't say, when will print your own stamps, are they going to be available? If so, when?
I'm not exactly certain of the date. We have to work on the technology around that.
But it's something you want to do?
It's something certainly that we want to provide to our customers.
Within a couple of years, I think.
Okay, all right. Thanks for being with us today. Julie Edge, MHK, Chris Thomas, MHK, and the future of the Isle of Man Post. Now, if you have anything to add, by all means, you can email manninline@manxradio.com when we're off the air, or call the answer phone on 682 631. And thanks for being with us today. Good to talk to you, whether you are in the post office this afternoon at Kirkandras or Kirkmichael, Kirkonkan, wherever it is, the Peel Post Office or Ramsey Self-Service Kiosk, at the Union Mills Post Office or anywhere else. I think the message we've heard today is not all of Isle of Man Post Office's enemies are outside Tynwald. So I'll keep your eye on that. And of course, there is a general election coming up. You could ask your prospective candidates what they think of the post office. Thanks to Barry Redfern producing today on the Mannin line. Back open line on Monday, 12 midday. Have a good weekend.
WINT
1886 Bar and Grill.
Amazing food all day, every day. Lunchtime